Why did Warner Brothers hire a general manager instead of an editor-in-chief or a CEO or a publisher for DC Comics? Good question. I got the answer. I did a lot of homework. I think I got it figured out. I will get into this article with you. We've got a couple of articles to look at. We've got an organizational chart to look at. I've got a good insight on this. If you want to support my work, huge help to me. Subscribe to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. And also check out collegeofthedead.com. At collegeofthedead.com, you will find College of the Dead Graduation Day. It's an ongoing zombie apocalypse color series. Really well done. Beautiful. All ready to ship. And coming soon, epicmermaids.com. Sign up for The Mermaids. You'll get an email when the book comes out. It's like Game of Thrones with mermaids. Really well done. You'll love it. Why a general manager? DC has announced, well, they haven't officially announced, but it's come out and they've told people and people know a general manager is coming in to run DC Comics. He's going to take on the responsibility of the editor-in-chief as well as the publisher. Jim Lee is moving into a different creative services role. He's going to report to the head of licensing, Pam Lifford. Jim Lee is remaining head of global brands and franchises for all of WarnerMedia. And the general manager is going to come in. His name is not announced. They say he has an esports background. And they say that he's coming September 18th. So what is he going to do? Why is it important? Well, one of the things about corporate structures, and it's interesting to know, is when they hire a CEO, they have certain responsibilities. When they hire a general manager has certain responsibilities. The responsibilities can change from company to company, but one of the ways to understand how each company views each position is to go ahead and look at their structure, their internal structure. So Warner Brothers, WarnerMedia is looking to sell Crunchyroll. That's a division of Otter Media, which is basically their collection for other different strange media things that they happen to own. So Crunchyroll they're considering selling supposedly for $1 billion or more. But what's interesting about it is who's running it now. Joanne Waage is running it now. So they announced in Variety that the co-founder was going to be pushed into an advisory role. Now what that means basically is the co-founder of Crunchyroll is no longer going to have the responsibilities of either a CEO or a general manager. And we'll get into the responsibilities of a general manager in 1 second. They are different from a CEO. So Joanne Waage is heading, so she's heading Crunchyroll as a general manager. She's still there. This was from 2018 that they stuck her in. Okay? So if you look at her LinkedIn, she's got a good background. But one of the first things I noticed is she describes herself as an experienced CEO and then goes on as general manager of Crunchyroll and then board director. She's been on different boards. If you look at her background, 2 years at Crunchyroll, general manager to present. They put her in as a general manager. And prior to that, she was a board director for a joint venture between, well, not even prior. Part of that is her being a board director for Elation Inc. and Sumitomo Corp. So that is what that's about, is investments in anime film. Elation has a relationship with Crunchyroll. Prior to that, for Rakuten, she was at a division and she was a CEO of that division for 1 year and 7 months. Now, in terms of her experience as a CEO, not so much experience. So she's got 1 year and 7 months at that division of Rakuten, and so far all she's been able to get is general manager position. Not a bad position. I'm sure she's doing very well for herself. But as you can see, she's looking. So if you know anybody that needs a CEO, she'll jump at that position. She wants a CEO position. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's a good way to describe it in your LinkedIn so people know, hey, I'd love to be a CEO. So when you look at why would DC Comics need a general manager, you'd say, well, what is it that a general manager does? Yes, we get that Crunchyroll has a general manager that wants to be a CEO either there or for somewhere else. But what won't they let Joanne Waage do at CEO as if she were the CEO, what would they let her do as general manager that they would let her do if she was a CEO? If they had a CEO, president of DC Comics, what would those responsibilities be like? Well, the first thing to know is that a general manager, this is from Investopedia, is responsible for all aspects of the business, including daily operations, administrative functions, and finances. Because of the enormity of the role, a big part of the job is effective delegation, meaning you've got to be good at managing people and delegating. This is a cool article, and this is from study.com. This talks about the differences between a CEO and a general manager. So understand, like in their organizational chart, you've got the CEO of AT&T. That's a completely separate corporate structure from WarnerMedia. WarnerMedia, all these people, all these important managers report to Jason Kilar, former Hulu guy, former co-founder and head of Hulu. But he's in charge of all of WarnerMedia. So all of these people, all these managers who then have people reporting to them, all report to Jason Kilar. And Jason Kilar is not just the general manager. He's responsible for what a CEO is responsible for, which includes not usually day-to-day operations. They're in charge of being leaders of the company or the organization. They must have exceptional leadership skills to adequately supervise other top executives in the company. Communication skills are also necessary to negotiate contracts effectively and explain any policies that they've developed. As CEOs, they're the ones at the very top of the organization. They must be able to self-motivate and keep on a schedule to ensure everything runs smoothly. So they're ultimately responsible for everything from the strategy of what the business is going to do and try to accomplish, and for executing that strategy through the managers that report to them. The occupation requires travel frequently. Okay, so the job responsibilities of a CEO: developing goals for a company or an organization, overseeing financial statements and budgets, selecting managers, and finding ways to cut costs. So Joanne is most likely not developing budgets for Crunchyroll. You know, she will probably submit projected budgets. But whatever she's doing is going to be approved by someone above her. And as you can see, Crunchyroll is not even on this chart. Neither is DC Comics. They report to people who are in this group, probably on this lower layer of the group. I did do some research on who reports to who, but interestingly, it changes a hell of a lot. Like this guy, Tony Goncalves, was part of HBO Max, but prior to that, he was a chief operating officer for Crunchyroll, and they just keep moving these executives around. But Jason Kilar moves them around like players on a team because he knows what each of these people can do. Also, interestingly, this guy, Andy Forssell, very impressive guy. He was an interim CEO at Hulu, and Jason was a co-founder of Hulu and ran Hulu. He obviously knows a lot about Andy Forssell and what he can do. Andy Forssell started as a general manager and senior vice president under a couple of the guys that Jason Kilar threw out from old legacy media. As you heard, there were a lot of layoffs for Warner Brothers recently. Jason threw them out, but before he did, he had his old Hulu buddy, Andy Forssell, working under them, running operations. So Jason can put a general manager under a CEO or someone he may not be 100% confident about, and then elevate that general manager. So it'll be interesting to see the ultimate general manager of DC Comics. What's his prior or her prior relationship with Jason Kilar or any of these other executives? But most likely Jason Kilar. Because one of the things about this guy, Kilar, is he's been around a while. He has relationships with people at Hulu, people from Amazon, different industries. So he's going to put people in that he knows he can count on and what they're good at and say what they're not good at. But he doesn't need a CEO for DC Comics. Why? He's not looking for a visionary, obviously. They're not looking for someone to go in and create the business model. The business model, the conceptualization of the business model, no offense to Joanne, is not coming from Joanne. She may make some suggestions and whatnot. She's there to manage and to execute on the CEO's strategy or any kind of approved strategy that she submits to someone above her, like Jason Kilar, to approve and say, yeah, go do that. Continuing, general managers work under a CEO but oversee operations in a specific area of the organization. They make sure that daily operations are completed and successful. So a general manager is chasing everyone around like a chicken and making sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. As a business owner and somebody that has people who report to me, you got to do that a lot unless you have an excellent general manager. I'm really my own general manager. And you get that with a small business a lot of times. With a big business like WarnerMedia, the general managers and the CEOs have very specific delegated responsibilities and very specific expectations. It doesn't mean that people can't exceed expectations like an Andy Forcell, or put someone in even as like, well, he's a senior VP. He was always going to run HBO Max. There was no way Jason Kilar was going to not put his guy in eventually when he was ready, probably after the launch was fully executed or the timing was right. These guys move people around like chess pieces. It's pretty impressive. It's a whole different world, right? So general managers are in charge of other staff and ensuring policies are met. Since they are managers of a group of people, they must have excellent leadership skills. They must be able to make decisions quickly as they are in charge of the daily tasks of others. So when you give someone as a general manager responsibilities to execute on, you've got to get this out by this deadline. You're the production manager. Is this stuff going to be on time? Is it not on time? If it's not on time, why the heck isn't it? Like, a general manager makes sure that the people under them are doing what they're supposed to do and is really following up to make sure that they can execute. And that's where people really get a chance to prove themselves. So if you have a manager somewhere, don't bring them problems, bring them solutions. That's how you have a good employee that will move up in the organization, because they can handle problems. So all the problems at DC Comics are going to be organized, handled, and executed at the general manager level. They don't need Bob Harris, and very talented comics editorial professional, is not going to run a management team for the success of DC Comics. He can probably tell you what good comics are or bad comics are, but how many titles should DC Comics do? Does Jim Lee know? What's effective? What's their business plan? How are they going to be successful? Why does it make sense for them to make toys if they're going to make their own toys internally? How could that money have been used better otherwise? How can you get a higher return on investment of whatever capital it takes to run DC Comics? If Jim Lee can't answer that question to the extent that Jason Kilar is going to be impressed, if Dan DiDio can't answer that question, then his desk is going to be packed up and they're going to be sent on their way. And they're going to just say, look, you seem like a great person. I don't really see a fit for you here for where we're going in the future to serve our customers passionately, or whatever it is that they say exactly. But it's something on that order. And that's realistically what probably happened with Dan DiDio when he was pitching 5G. As you can see, 5G is another idea of another line of comics. That's not what they were looking for. They're looking to reinvent DC Comics, leveraging its brands and its characters into other businesses, other licensing, other things that can get accomplished. Even the new general manager they're bringing in, maybe because he has an esports background, he's making some great suggestions and ideas. But realistically, the general manager comes in at this point to put a circle around what's left of the remnants of DC Comics, make sure that everything is kept to a certain high level of quality, and that people know, what the employees know what they are supposed to be doing operationally, and that everyone that stays there is there for a reason and can help execute whatever the plan is. So having a history in the editorial of producing comics, it counts for a basic level of quality, but that person cannot have any kind of leadership role, because it's not like you can have leadership in editorial, like a comics editor, a brand manager. Like, hey, that's not what Batman would do. Hey, Aquaman would never do a thing like that. That's fine. But there are multiple things that are supposed to be coming out of the brands that are owned by DC Comics, from young adult novels, comics as periodicals, which will continue probably at some level, but less and less and less, obviously. Maybe doing more with the digital division, maybe not. It has to be a significant enough business for them to care. They care about direct-to-consumer very, very much, but not to the point of ridiculous. So if there isn't a viable way to produce digital comics, they're not going to do it. It's gotta appear viable. When the general manager comes in September 18th, 2020, and you see certain things get canceled and other things not get canceled, they'll most likely stay with whatever they keep intact for about 6 months or so, and then they'll reevaluate and see what niches of the business seem like they're viable, what needs more development, what needs more resources invested, and whatever money they need, they'll get. They invested $4 billion to launch HBO Max. There's not a question of there's not enough money. There's a question of what are we getting when we put the money in? What are we getting back? What's the potential of it? And loving comic books or loving whatever, it's not about that. It's, yes, you want to care passionately about the product, but there has to be a consumer market that's willing to buy it. Since the managers are a group of people, they have to have, okay, we did the leadership skills. General managers work with other top executives, including CEOs, so they must have good communication skills as well. General managers can advance onto executive manager positions with training and experience. Job responsibilities of a general manager include setting staff schedules, creating policies, making sure projects are completed in a timely manner, as discussed, and assisting staff members with various tasks. So someone who can be accountable for everything, someone who can be accountable from a dollars and cents standpoint, someone who could be accountable for strategy, not coming up with it, but executing it and making sure the people under them executing it. So instead of taking up the time of Jason Killar with Dan DiDio and Jason Killar talking about the next plan for DC Comics, you can have the general manager reporting to Pam Lifford, as they say it looks like they're going to do. We'll see how that all kind of comes along, but probably that's what it's going to be. Jim Lee reporting to the general manager, reporting to Pam Lifford, or maybe they'll report independently, whatever it is. But she'll be able to look at the business sense of why are we making these comics? What is the business plan? What the heck is that we doing? And if she says, listen, let's discuss strategy, she can collaborate with the general manager, and then the general manager is in between Pam as well as the rest of the employees at DC Comics executing on whatever the business strategy is. So you get an idea. That's why a publisher is not going to be able to take responsibility for everything at DC Comics that impacts licensing and film and all these other sorts of things. So all this stuff related to the brands related to DC Comics will flow through Pam Lifford, and all of the business that they're doing at DC Comics related to their brands and their other franchises. And I'm assuming she's in charge of Bugs Bunny and who knows what other brands they own at WarnerMedia. That all will flow through Pam, and she'll be able to evaluate what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And the general manager will execute whatever her decision is. She'll also talk to higher ups and say, listen, this general manager is not working out, or hey, this guy's got a great idea, or whatever it is. So she'll know whose time to not waste. And they'll also know by reputation if Pam says, listen, we need to put $4 million in some sort of a new gaming concept to exploit DC Comics, and here's the plan for it, and here's how it's going to work, and here's the new people we're going to bring in to manage and execute on that. No time is wasted. All resources are allocated appropriately, and either the business plan executes or it doesn't, but it's incredibly organized, and that's the right way to go about doing these sorts of things. That's why they need to hire a general manager at DC Comics, so they can be organized, so they don't waste time in the future on DC Comics, so that whatever is going to be done going forward can be executed at the right level. The resources can be where they need to be, and they can get accountability and results throughout the team. If you want to tell me what your feedback is, I'd love to hear it. Give me it in the comments below. I love having you subscribe and click the bell for notifications. It's great having you be part of the channel. And again, you can support my work at collegeofthedead.com. Get a copy of College of the Dead Graduation Day. It's the current in an ongoing series. You can get the prior one, and we have a new one that we're working on called College of the Dead Spring Break. Also, sign up at epicmermaids.com for the mermaids. It's a full-color, ongoing mermaids epic fantasy. It's like Game of Thrones with mermaids. I think you'll really like it. I appreciate you listening. I will see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.